Hello, everybody. My name is Alec Celis. I'm not sure how you ended up here, but I am glad that you are because I'm about to take you through the online tour of Why Does an Oven Exist? The art show by myself, collaborating with Elsewhere Museum, the Cemala Foundation, and Guilford Works. I'm just really excited for this and grateful, so stay tuned.
Okay, so let's talk about why does an oven exist? Welcome to Elsewhere Museum. If you've never been to Elsewhere Museum, it used to be a thrift store and has now been turned into an art museum. So there is tons of old stuff to work with that is surprisingly helpful for when you're putting on an exhibition. And I'll talk more about the things that I use to transform the place as I go on. But this first piece is Dark Winter slash Diabolical Blueprints. So I called it Dark Winter because I made it during the last winter, the first winter with COVID, and everybody was calling it a dark winter, and it was before anything was going on, and I didn't exactly know what a dark winter was going to look like, but I guess I thought this was gonna be it. Also, it was one of the first times I was really messing with color in a way that I felt like it created a specific mood or intention. Um, and moving on, we have my artist statement, which is kind of like very important to the show. So I would encourage you to pause it and take a read. So, in a short summary, you could say that, you know, kind of realized that humans had no purpose other than existing. But instead of saying that humans had no purpose, I thought that our purpose was to exist. And, and what does it look like to make art with the same purpose? Art whose purpose is solely to exist. Um, so that's kind of like how I got all the inspiration for this work. Um, this next piece that we're coming up on is called Busybody. So this one is lots of pen and ink, lots of micron, some markers, lots of color. Surprisingly, I had started out, I thought it was going to be black and white, but it became very colorful. It actually is called a busybody because it reminds me of my mother. My mother is a very industrious, busy woman, and so when I was drawing this, I was just watching her run around the house and do all of her things, and I was like, she's a busybody, and that was kind of the inspiration for this piece. At this point, I was like intensely obsessed with like the faces that I was drawing. You can see the big face in the bottom corner. Also, these specific lines and shapes that were getting stuck in my head. I love the little penguins in the bottom left corner, or they look like penguins to me at least. I think those are really cool. But yeah, that's some of the background about this piece. And then moving on, we have an untitled piece that I made around the same time that I think was just kind of like, I don't know, doodling and exploring. I got a big thing of the same size sheets of paper and wanted to see what I could do with some marker and pens. Um, I really like this one because of the song lyrics actually that are in it. I think they kind of like depict how I was feeling in that moment, and how like I don't know, just like a brain can feel. Like there's just all these thoughts and colors and monsters and ideas. And then moving on, this is a one day I won't fear you anymore. So this one is actually directly about my obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. So I was drawing some, the faces and the same specific lines and shapes that you can see from before. But I was also including like alien ships, like you can see there, and like a knife that you can see there. Things that you could see doubt written there, which is a big thing for OCD, doubt. I was kind of drawing the things that triggered me the most, aliens and knives, and It sounds ridiculous, but that was actually really hard for me to depict those images and not feel unbelievably stressed. And so that was like, one day I won't fear these anymore.
Hey everybody, I wanted to take a quick break from the exhibition to talk about, this kind of first chunk that you really experienced because I like to think of this chunk as sort of a more journal type work. Like one of them is in my actual journals, as you saw, Dark Winter slash Diabolical Blueprints, but I think that all of them are just kind of have this doodly kind of design, which is like really where I come from. Like all my kind of stuff is like from scribbling with a pen or something and just making something out of it. So I think it's a good way to start off to like kind of show the roots of where I'm from. So that's it.
So, moving on from that piece, we go on to Chapel of the Shepherd's Field, which has kind of an interesting backstory. So, it's actually an album cover that I was working on for a friend of mine, and he sent me this picture of a stone angel, and I was like, "Where's that from?" And he's like, "Oh, this chapel in Bethlehem." Well, it turns out to be um, supposedly the place where the angels first told the shepherds of Christ's birth. And it's supposed to be like where the story of Jesus was spread, kind of. And it was really fun to work with all these biblical symbols. Because this was the beginning, I was very like interested in putting the alpha and then, simultaneously the omega symbols from alpha to omega, from beginning to end, that biblical thing. Um, yeah, this was just I really loved working with the biblical references, and I bathed it in freaking uh, rubbing alcohol to get that yellowy kind of textured paper. Um, yeah. So this next piece is called "The Ship of Theseus." Uh, I don't know why I sounded confused when I said that. I know what I'm talking about, but this piece is called "The Ship of Theseus." It represented a time for me where there was like a ton of change, like, and I wondered how much of myself could change and still say the same. And I feel like a lot of this piece was mismatched like that, like a bunch of just new things that I was thinking about and old ways of doing art, that were all combining in this like, collage, oil, rubber cement, foam board mess. But once I put all that together, in the end, I was like, you know what, this looks like a ship. And in a very similar way, I felt like a ship. That like just hoped it could make it to the next calm point. Okay, and then this next one here is it's definitely interesting for sure. I lit it specifically this way so that you guys could see the dripping down of. This one actually too had. Actually, I want to say that this one had nail polish remover on it, but you can see there's a little bit of a story to the purple mass and what's going on. I like to think that he's like carrying a fish home from somewhere, but it's raining in this dark black world. Um, but I won't give too much detail. But this one was like all feel. I just went with this one. Um, and the reason I called "There's Nothing You Can Do to Appease Me" is just nothing at this point was really feeling right artistically, and I wanted to, and it was making me angry.
So those works that you guys just saw were some of the works that I was kind of pumping out when I was feeling like creatively very inspired by like mixed media. I was collaging, I was using rubber cement, I was using whatever I could get my hands on to make this piece look different and kind of cool. You know what I mean? Um, I kind of work and work and work and work until I like it, and sometimes it just becomes a big gray blob, and I work it to death. But Sometimes it comes out like Chapel of the Shepherd's Field. I want to say is so covered in rubbing alcohol and all this stuff that it's been yellowed, and I really like that. And it wouldn't have happened without like these intense baths and drying in isopropyl alcohol, so that's kind of fun. um, yes, the next works are more experimental for me, but I want to say more pretty than the other ones for sure, so I hope you enjoy.
Thank you, past Alec. Um, Moving on, we have this wall that kind of represents two very different points in my art making for me. In neither period was I making them super consistently like I was with those last pieces you saw. Both of these were kind of one-off pieces. So this first piece is a non-attachment slash who gives a fuck anyway slash IAAWIEH. This piece was, I wrote it down here. I wrote like kind of just a big exhausted sigh. I was tired, and I feel like you can see that in just the way that the lines are kind of like, I don't know, almost aggressively trying to make things work. And maybe that sounds like I'm ragging on my own stuff, but I like it. The lines are just working so hard to get everything to come together, but it's so hard to almost see. And then you have, to me, this like story of all these different figures. My imagination can definitely run off like with all the different shapes and what could be going on this like planet almost. This is almost too rambly, but what I'm trying to say is that uh, this one was also very like from feel, and it came out pretty interesting to me. Very exciting. Uh, this one is the cat. I love the cat. I almost think of the cat as like a prelude to the man in a way. The cat is an amalgamation of candle wax and string and oil paint and pastels and marker and pen and ink, um, and and collage and rubber cement is my favorite, and red wine actually, and I really think of this as being like when I was like, oh yeah, I can use anything to put this together. And I felt like a cat in a way, playing with all these different toys, cooped up inside my house because it was COVID. I mean, it still is COVID. So I was cooped up like a cat playing with all these toys, and was excited that that something like that came out.
Popping back in just to say that I have a cool story about those last two pieces. So, non attachment is actually my most recent painting, or whatever you want to call it. And the cat is actually my first painting ever. So, it's really, really interesting to note that those two, like, I don't know, are kind of like goalposts or end posts or whatever in a certain way, but also like are so similar. They have similar styles and the coloring and the line work and things like that. So, and the storytelling, I think there's a little bit of storytelling. Maybe I'm over exaggerating, but yeah. So I think that's a cool story about the two of them.
Now we're coming upon unofficial portraits. So there's been a lot of discussion about who exactly this picture represents. And for some reason, the people I've asked, they can't stop thinking it's Trump. So, um, I can't necessarily say that I was going for Trump, but if that's what people get from it, then that's what people get from it. So it's for now named unofficial portrait, in kind of reference to him. You know, um, like the presidents have the official portrait, but this is his unofficial one. But I think it can be an unofficial portrait of any kind of mysterious dark figure that we don't trust. Um, so this is the man. This is my pride and joy, my baby. Um, the man is about, I want to say, a year old now. He is an ongoing sculptural work that will hopefully continue until the day I die. Of, I don't know, my artist scraps, things that I find that I feel like should go on him, things that might accidentally end up on the man. There's a lot of history in him. He started out as one of those pieces I was talking about earlier that just turns to black, and I like worked to death. And I kind of revived it by turning it into this sculptural work that was like all these pieces of paper cut up that were hanging, and then eventually the strings that were tying them came together, and then things got tied into the strings, and then they started being collaged onto things, and then eventually I was like, I need a wooden base. So he gets, this big stick that holds him up, and he just starts collecting more and more artistic items. You know, I I have made things specifically for the man, but much of his stuff is things that actually you know, didn't initially have the intention of becoming part of him. Like this work you're seeing in front of yourself, the green and the red roses was a different sculpture that got eaten up by the man. His feet are all covered in like black paint and hot glue. A lot of hot glue gun stuff is in this man. Um, this is kind of like, I don't even know, his ponytail. He's got all this different thread that covers the fabric and then goes up inside of him. Um, his outer shell right there is this big piece I was working on, that I was seeing the way that ink moved around and just how it looked, and it looked pretty organic. And if you see all the red in the man, or it looks like, oh my gosh, is that some kind of bloody thing? That's red ink. But when you touch him, it definitely gets all over your hands as well, and you're like, oh my gosh. uh so moving on, there's a ton of tape. This man is definitely 70% packing tape, but um he's he's still around. He's got no food in him. I don't ever like putting food or anything. I don't want him to become a biohazard. If anything, I think he'd just have a bunch of like paint thinner and poisonous stuff on him. Oh, and you can see his stand here. So uh, I actually have put a lot of work into this stand and the colors, and it's where I've made all of these paintings. Yeah, it has a lot of history, the stand itself. And then these are jars of the man. So he has pieces that have come off of him, um, but they're supposed to stay with him in some way. But I don't like the idea that he just holds on to all of his baggage. So I like the idea that he can put it in a little jar and open it when he needs it. But he's moved on from that point in his life. Um, and here's some more shots of the top of it. Uh, that's from an 8-track, that tape there. It's a bow staff, I want to say, from when I used to take like weapons karate. That's holding up on right now. Lots of acrylic paint. Um, this is what I've been working on. That's why it doesn't have exist.
And that was it. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm going to give another thank you to Elsewhere Museum, the Cemala Foundation, and Guilford Works for all of their support. Um, you guys can follow me on Instagram at Alec Celis, and elsewhere on Instagram at Elsewhere Museum. Just thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys made it this far. It's kind of long.